Great. Let's record.
Okay. I love this. I love it. I love it. I love it.
I just love having like a Saturday morning like conversation, but it's also like a little show. Like it's so extra nice. Let's record.
No, it's absolutely fantastic. I just love this. I love it. I love it. I love it. Why? Wait, is there an echo?
Yeah, I've turned it off because I was playing it, so that'll be gone now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's get this. And now
hey, everyone out there in the YouTube universe. Hey, everybody on Instagram Live. What's up? Hey, Josiah. So I am chatting with my girl Lauren this morning. We are going to be talking about alternative happy endings for women and
new narratives for women. So how do we create new narratives for ourselves, and then redefining romance for a single life?
Absolutely. Oh, I have a question. Shouldn't we also be on live together?
The only problem with that, is that then there's an echo.
Then there will be an echo. Okay. All right. So
I do mine. It's like,
but I'm talking to Lauren. I promise you I am. It's not just me talking to myself.
Yeah. So, okay, let's dive right into this. Alternative happy endings for women. Hit us with some stats, because that's what I love. Like, you come with all the facts of like what's actually going on in the world right now. So this isn't just like you and my perspective that, oh, everyone we know is like dynamic and single. No, this is actually like what's going on. So can you give us a bit of context?
So yeah, I think this was really interesting. So this conversation that we're having today is actually piggybacking off of last Saturday. So on Clubhouse, Lauren and I hosted a room with the same title, and it was actually pretty dynamic. We had a whole kind of range of generation of women from early 20s till probably 60, I would think, 50, 60. So and really deep diving into just how much we kind of have been influenced around what our lives are supposed to look like, particularly as women, particularly when it comes to fairy tales, and having that, that knight in shining armor, or even just the general idea of, I'm going to grow up, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have kids in a certain time frame, and being able to really be okay with it being different than that, for sure. And I think I think what was really interesting, part of our dynamic was really talking about how there is a disproportionate number of single Black women in this country. And then, like, as we are going through this Black Lives Matter movement and looking at just how much systemic racism has contributed to that. So there's the disproportionate incarceration rate of Black men. There is the education gap between men and women. And all of those things really kind of trickle down. And Black women are the demographic with the highest new rate of new small businesses and creating businesses. But I threw out the question, so many of these amazing and dynamic, influential women who are creating amazing brands and giving back to our community, myself included, we're all single and haven't started families. So how does that play into the dynamic of being business owners?
This is something I've been looking at also. Like, there was actually a whole, I can send it to you, a whole thing on Instagram today that I posted to my stories, just about this capitalist, white supremacist, patriarchal society that we live in, that has so many different effects on all of us. Like, it doesn't really serve anyone except very, very few. Even like most white men, it doesn't actually serve, even though they want to uphold it. It's like, it's a fuck up for all of us. And what happened to me when I was really trying to undo the story of a man to save me was I became masculine. So I actually bought into that mindset and just was like, that whole idea of like growth mindset and achievement, and, oh, it's not the problem with the world, it's the problem with me. So how can I take that on and just like work harder and be more dynamic and do it? But it still can hollow you out and really burn you out, because you're not actually against the construct, you're reacting to it by becoming it. And that's a disaster too. And I've seen that with a lot of like powerful women. It's this idea of, I'll just work harder, I'll do it more, I can take it all on. This ridiculous amount of responsibility that you're never going to be Jeff Bezos. Like, it's just actually, like, that was my realization during this whole COVID-19. I was like, I've been working since I was 9 years old. I understand what hard work looks like. And even if I maintain this rate, which is literally a completely single life, I'm not with my family, I have very few friends, I have no relationship. It is me creating and working, which is a choice and I love it. But like, even at this pace, I'm never going to catch up to that capitalist ideal of this American dream, which is you can have whatever you want. So I had to redefine, well, what is it that I want then? Like, what is it a life without this goal of financial security or masculine security, which is so often tied to finances? And then looking at, well, what's a romantic life? Like, what's a whole different way of pleasure and play and all of that? So I'd love to know, like, what's been your journey with your success? What have you had to sacrifice along the way?
Yes, no, it's definitely been super interesting. I think that, and actually, I'm really curious. We're going to come back. We have to talk about the fact that you're having this conversation around the American dream, being someone who was not born and raised in the U.S. So I definitely want to circle back to that. But just for anybody coming in the room, I'm chatting with my girl Lauren about alternative happy endings for women and creating new narratives around our romantic lives. And so I think the journey for me was that I thought that there was supposed to be a certain order of things, kind of like you grow up, you go to university, you find your mate, get married in your mid-20s, have kids, live happily ever after. And I think part of that was generational for me, right? So I grew up with lots of examples of long-term marriages. My parents are just celebrated their 49th wedding anniversary. And having been, growing up in a two-parent household, and then there's lots of like aunts and uncles and grandparents who were married for many, many, many years. So they also were the generation of like people who still got married, like when they got out of college. My mother got married when she was 20 years old, a senior in college at Dillard University in New Orleans. And, there was this sense of like, okay, that's just how things happen. But when I was graduating from college, not only was I not in that headspace, but I was like excited to start life, get out in the world. And my mom encouraged me to do that. I think there was a part of her that's like, gosh, I got married so young, started a family. She still went on to become a professional woman and followed her dreams, but she definitely encouraged me to like, go ahead and get out in the world. But then that only lasted for a couple of years, because by the time I was like 24, my mom was like, okay, so like, when are we going to lock this in? And I was like, so I was 24 many years ago. And I think it's really, really being open to finding like what your journey is going to be, because no one can really tell you that. Like your journey is going to be your journey.
Yeah, 100%. Like I had I played by those rules. So I wanted to be married, like pretty much more than anything. Like I've never wanted to be a mom so much as I've wanted a home and a husband. Like I saw as those two as like stabilizing forces in my life. And I'd done all of that by 25. So when I like redid my life and started over again, it was like, well, what's a new paradigm shift? What else is it? And I only knew that construct. So I went out of one marriage into going, well, where's the next one? Like, I don't understand why I haven't got that, because that seemed to be like what the point was, except that now I'm like, no, there's what I was craving in that dynamic was the sense of romance, fulfillment, being cherished, being appreciated, being understood, having that. And it is possible to give those things to yourself. It's possible to feel that level. Like I was saying this like last week to my sister, we did a sister sessions. And I was like, it can sometimes feel so overwhelming to me. Like there's literally someone else there, but it's just me with me. But that's how big it can feel, which is beautiful. And I love that whole feeling. So it's like, well, is it possible to have a very romantic life as a single person? And I think that it 100% is.
Absolutely.
But it's a lot of this undoing of what are the things you buy into. And personally, love and money are very tied together for me. So I feel like there's that interplay of both, and one or the other, which is just the binary constructs that we live in, like where it doesn't have to be one or other. Sorry, I'm getting now distracted. Nick, yes, of course, this is not a hat. It's like just flowers in my hair. I'm definitely going to keep it on. Are you going to keep it on when you see me later? Like, yes.
No. Like, let's just all stop and pause and acknowledge how amazing Lauren's outfit is. Like, even get prepared. I was not prepared to come to the table this morning. I was like, okay, I know next time I got to step my game up, because you came through with the fire this morning, Lauren.
Well, this is part of my romantic life, I guess, that I'd say, which is like I get to wear whatever I want at home. So that is a lot of fur and bikinis and flowers and like and I've got like, oh my gosh, I mean, I know you can't really see, but I'm wearing like these like leopard print pants, which are super furry, flamingo slippers. It's like I can do whatever I want. It's just such a it's so fun. So yeah, this is part of it. Like, how do I make my life? And a lot of candles, and I've got peppermint tea. It's all that stuff, which I didn't know I was allowed to have that all for myself. And so there's like been a softening into that. Yeah. So I guess what I'm looking at now is what is my alternative happy ending? Mm-hmm. And it's a feeling state more than dependent on a person, place, or thing. Although the place helps and things help. Like, setting the scene for that fairy tale life, like, is wonderful. And that includes, like, I know with you with plants, like I'm a plant mother. I have a lot of plants.
Plant mom, definitely a plant mom.
Yeah, I love my children. Like, today is the day we go outside and I'm giving them a whole like spa day. So like, you know, looking forward to that. But it's little things that I can do that like this, the way my home smells, just the sensory experience of creating this environment that is worthy for me. Instead of dependent on, I was used to like, I'll do this for others. Like, if I knew you were coming over today, then everything would be spotless and ready for you, for the visitor, for the guest. But if it's just me, it doesn't matter. And now I'm trying to be like, I'm the visitor, or I'm the important person in this home. How do I make that beautiful for myself? So how has it looked for you as you're creating your own happiness in where you're at?
Yes, no, I love what you just said. And this made me think so much about some of the women that we chatted about in our clubhouse room. The idea of making myself feel good in the things I wear with my pajamas, with lingerie. Like, I don't have to be in a relationship to treat myself to a special outfit or lingerie. I think the other one is really taking care of myself around food and cooking. So it's not like, when there's been so many things that have come out of being in quarantine and in COVID, but I really started cooking for myself, and I started cooking recipes that I haven't seen or that were like family recipes, but I'd never taken time to cook them myself and things like that. It's almost like taking myself on a date.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and this is all like the last date that I took myself on was like for example, Halloween. Now, usually like before the pandemic, I was a very, very like out and about, always at different types of events all the time. And so for me, like Halloween weekend would be like, oh my God, Halloween is on Saturday night. Where am I going? Who am I going to be with? Got to be out and about. And besides the fact that it was like 40 degrees outside, I said, I'm going to take myself on a date. I made a nice meal, grabbed my glass of wine, picked a scary movie to watch. And it was awesome. Like, and what I saw in that is how much I've grown in one, I like hanging out with myself. One of I have a former therapist who used to say, practice becoming the person that you want to come home to. So it's like, it doesn't mean my like alternative happy endings doesn't necessarily mean that I give up my vision. Like, if my vision is to be with a partner, to be a mom, to have kids, you know, the whole 9 yards, I can still have that vision. But as I'm working towards that, I'm like very content and comfortable and confident in like that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be today. And with that, I can spend time with myself. I can take myself on dates. I can take myself on quarantine dates. And it actually felt really, really nice to be like, I'm going to spend time with myself this evening.
I mean, yeah, I don't really celebrate Halloween, but I definitely used to be a more out and about person. And I also stayed in like Thanksgiving. I had one of the best days ever, and Halloween, and they all with myself. And it was that sense of like, yeah, deep pleasure of being allowed to be at home, have hot chocolate, watch movies, like stay up late. Like, it's just it's all quite a delightful experience. And one thing I've noticed where I've seen the growth in myself is, so up until recently, I was on a dating app to like meet people because I thought, oh, well, how am I going to meet anyone in the pandemic? Like, this is the way to do it. But I kept having these very unfulfilling, empty conversations. And I noticed some recurring themes. And when I see these themes coming back at me, I know that, you know, things come back until you learn the lesson or until you undo the thing, like what's being presented. And it was this thing that I thought, oh, wow, this has been such a shift. So before, a man would say something like, because, you know, I'll do a FaceTime before meeting anyone, because usually after a FaceTime conversation, I never actually want to meet them in real life. Like I can tell in 2 seconds. Like,
important. Like I can't just show up. Like I have to like talk to you, hear your voice, see your
yeah, let me just check it out. Yeah. Anyway, this guy did our first FaceTime with his shirt off. Like, who the hell does? I was like, wow, okay, you're going there. Interesting. Like, it was insane. I felt like saying, please put some clothes on before you come back. Like, this is just too much to handle. But I was making food, and he said, oh, that like looks so good. Make me a plate. And my blood just froze. Before, I come from a family in South Africa that is very patriarchal. It's like a colonial family. It's like waspy, that vibe where it's like, and it's the women are cooking and serving their men and presenting the plates. I mean, we served men our whole life. Like that's how it always was. You make the food, like you make the food, you set the table, you serve the man, and then you clear the table and the man sits there like drinking. So like, it's bizarre, but that's what I'm used to. So when this guy was like, make me a plate, old me a few years ago probably would have thought, this is the opportunity to prove myself. What a good cook I am. What a worthy woman I am. I'm the kind of woman who keeps a good home and makes great meals. Like, it's like, and then I was just like silent, like it just shocked me. I was like, definitely not. I knew it wasn't him. I went out a conversation with another person later. I was having like a pizza and he was like, oh, save me a slice. And again, I was like, no, I'm not making plates of food. I'm not sharing my I'm not like, if you hear that I'm into food, the response that I want to hear from a guy is, what can I get you? Or, wow, we're going to get fat together. Or like, can I bring dessert? Like, contribute, add something. Yeah, bring something more that I don't already have for myself, because I have a lot for myself. So are you going to add, or are you coming to take from me? Because really, like, I would rather then know you actually can't come in my home. Like, and so I saw that shift. Whereas before I thought, keep an open mind. Like my expectations for men were already so low that I would invite the opportunity for someone to maybe grow and step up. But now I'm like, unless you're already on that level, I'm not putting down the ladder for you to climb up to me.
Right. And I think that part of that starts to come with, you know, maturity, because I definitely today have a completely different outlook and attraction to the type of person that I'm attracted to has changed. Like from the time that I was like first finished university and started out. And I have an appreciation for that, because to your point of like, I've worked very hard to become like a healthy whole person in order to be able to meet and connect with another healthy whole person. So, you know, it as the time goes on, the more I grow, the more I see those disconnects, and it becomes easier or harder to have those almost like conversations with yourself, and like, what am I now willing to put up with? What am I now looking for? And like, you can see very early on whether or not a person really is coming to make my life better, I make his life better, their life better, or is it going to be someone that's just draining?
Yeah, and do they make it about them, or can it be equal? Because I find that what I'm used to is men just instantly making it about themselves. Like, it's like, who am I in relation to them? It's like still that objectification of like, and I just want something different. But to your point earlier about this majority of women being single nowadays, and especially with Black women, as you've said, from like the prison system and education and that, all the women that I know who are single are like way advanced. Like I call it like people that I meet in the middle. So like with you, we just met, but we started in the middle. So whatever you've done in your life, whatever I've done, there's a resonance where like, I don't need to know your whole life to understand exactly where you're at now, because there's a similar vibration. I often feel that with women. I don't feel that with men. Now, is that because the divide is so great that women are just like on a different plane and men just aren't catching up? Or what is it going to take for that to be closed so that there is this more integration where I get to say, I know as many awesome men as I know awesome women? Like, that's what I'm waiting for. And I'm wondering what I can do within myself for that. Or is that just what's going on? Like, statistically, like what's happening? Like,
no, that's a really interesting question, and an interesting perspective to look at it, because I think that, gosh, I think there's so many factors. In some ways, they're in some ways, we've always kind of talked about women maturing faster than men. But then there is, at least in like my community, that oppression is like very real, and it widens the gap the older that you get. So there's like a disproportion. I think I was sharing with you that in university, I went to Cornell University, Ivy League school, and I remember a stat, and I'm sure I'm paraphrasing this stat, but just to kind of give you a sense of the disproportion, it was like for incoming class, freshman class, there were 300 Black women and 50 Black men.
Wow.
So right there, you already have, what's that, 5 women to each of those guys, and this is, I'm also saying this, I'm definitely, open to and understand, like, everyone's not going to date within their race. They're going to, love whoever that you love. It's just like, if you are, say, a single Black heterosexual woman who has the desire or vision to build a Black family, those kinds of stats do trickle down into making that more challenging. So so overall though, I think it takes, I don't know if I have an answer of what it's going to take to, like, I don't think I have a single answer of like, what is it going to take to close those types of gaps? It's lots of different things. There's definitely systematic structures in this country. I think we also have to start changing the narrative of like how we talk to one another. I think there has to be a shift in how we build one another up and prepare to make ourselves best available for, for whatever life that we want.
Say more about that. How do you mean build each other up? Like, what kind of things would you be saying?
Well, I think, and actually funny enough, I was like, just the things that have been happening over on Clubhouse for the last couple of days. It's like, I think that it's really, really important to keep a positive narrative going with each other, whether it's when men, women, Black, white. It's like, how do we keep the focus on supporting one another, affirming one another with like a positive affirmations that our communities are able to build, our communities are able to come together. There are, men with great attributes, and just like there's women with amazing things happening, versus and really letting go of all of the narratives of that kind of lead us into spaces of like this always happens, or I always have this experience, or this, or this group of people always do this. And I feel like those always keep us from really being fully open to meeting that, diamond in the rough, if you will.
I totally agree. Yeah. It's like, I just did a thing on TikTok. It was such a disaster. Like, I had to take it down. And I said my whole thing, like, I don't know if I told you about this, but there's that thing going around on TikTok. There's this guy who says, I ain't never seen 2 pretty best friends. One of them's always got to be ugly.
Yes, we were talking about
that. Funny. Like, so I said, I have never met a non-problematic white guy. They've always got to be. And then I listed like my preferences that they don't fulfill. Well, it was very bad. Like, because instead of having, and my thing was prove me wrong, single as fuck. Like, where's one, like, where's like a heterosexual like guy who's like a vibe for me, who isn't also into psychedelics, polyamory, and the super patriarchal. Like, I just have never seen it. And because it was like done in a aggressive, playful way, the response was just pure hate. Like, instead of people being like, oh my God, like, I'm not like that, or like, which I'd anticipated, it was like this, like, terrible, like, just slating me, like, you'll be like, you're awful, like, you're the problem with the world, and like hundreds of like hate, like just that typical male hate that I was very used to growing up, that I haven't experienced in a while because I haven't gone into those spaces. And I was like, it's too sore to even poke those things. There's too much like fragility and sensitivity around men who do feel worthless, inconsequential, have no part to play, that when you call it out, being like, I've never met someone like that, it's like, it's not even funny yet because it's too sore. So that's definitely not the way to do it. And I'm working out what the best way is without placating a man who doesn't have the strength to have the kind of conversation that I want to have. So it's like, I don't want to patronize or placate, but I also don't want to pretend that unacceptable behavior is in any way acceptable.
Right,
so
right.
I'm finding that balance. Like, how do I call it and be like, hey, please don't ask me to work for you for free, which is what happens like every time I seem to speak to a guy. Like, that's not going to happen, but without getting it, like neutralizing the attack instead of reacting. And in the same way, not attacking, but just stating it like, hey, you know?
Yeah, I think it's like, it's a difference between like being assertive versus being aggressive. And it really is a balancing act, and it takes time. Like I'm learning myself. Because the way that I've kind of been, trained and grown up, or just what my experience has been, that when I feel there's some type of, threat, for lack of a better phrase, my first instinct is to snap back, lash out, be aggressive. And like time and time again, that hasn't worked, right? So slowly it's taking time to change the narrative around, what is it that I'm really trying to accomplish here, right? So if I'm really trying to accomplish creating space for those awesome people to come forward and, reveal themselves, or for even someone to be able to recognize that, oh, okay, I didn't even realize I was doing that behavior, but thank you for showing, pointing that out. And now I have the opportunity to do it differently. It time and time again, I like have to like over and over again retrain myself that the aggressive way usually causes the other person to shut down. But if I'm able to like be responsive and just express, what the action was and how why it was upsetting, then there's usually a lot better chance for a dialogue to take place.
Yeah, totally. And Clubhouse has been a great place for like that for me. I mean, I'm just so into that place. And I think one thing I've noticed like this week when I had that experience, I had the tendency, I'm a coach and I naturally do want to help and heal. And I saw this reaction from these like men in pain. And I thought, oh, it's so like someone really needs to take care of those like fragile men. And then I thought, no, we're in Black Lives Matter right now. For God's sake, for once, can it just be not on white guys? Like, can it just not be about them? It's actually just it's not where I'm going to be positioned. I would rather be in environments and look at my own bias, understand my own racism, and undo my own disaster, instead of being like, let me go and help those ones who seem to be squealing. Like, no, like that's not like, I'm not actually interested in that. So also to own that part of me and be like, let me be in environments where I'm the one who's in the wrong, where I'm the one who like needs to learn, instead of like always being the most, like knowing the most in that environment. Like I want to know the least. I want to be in a room where I don't know, where someone says, Lauren, like that's not it. And I'm like, okay, thank you for teaching me. Like I'm actually in that growing phase now, which is more, and to listen a little bit more than to always be the authority. So that's been helping.
And I think that's one of the things what I really love about Clubhouse is that there's been, even though now the way they're making the changes, so it's like I really have to work for it to be able to, stumble upon those rooms and interest areas that I didn't even know that I was interested in, and step out of my comfort zone and meet like completely different people who have different completely experiences with me, that have totally different interests in me. And just like that push, that commitment to getting out of my comfort zone a little bit every day makes such a difference. It just, it sharpens first of all, it enriches my overall experience as like a human being. But then it does push me to say like, hey, I haven't thought about it like that. Or how can I contribute to certain spaces in a different way? I mean, in terms like around Black Lives Matter, I think I've said this, I may have said this in a room earlier this week. A lot of time it depends on how a person, like someone who's not a person of color, a lot of time it depends on how they approach me. It's like it's not my responsibility to teach, but when there is a kind of a genuine, authentic interest, like I'll be open to sharing my experience or sharing resources. I think that when it's kind of like, oh, just like kind of do it for me, it's, that can be very off-putting. And it's like, if you have a genuine desire to be an ally or a contributor to this movement, like you do have to own that and put the work in to do that.
Yeah, totally. I also think it's that thing of finding those environments. That one thing which has really helped with this rewriting a narrative of what my happy ending looks like is it has been doing a lot of clearing. So removing a lot of people, and through that removing, having that spaciousness to expand into different parts of myself and to expand my life into a more creative existence, that the time is not wasted with people who it's like, yeah, like watering a plant. Like if it's not going to grow, I don't want to be putting my water there. Like I want to be creating a flourishing garden, and there's only so much I can give before I'm like, you know what? Oh, wow. Like, no. And I've got way more discerning now to tell very quickly. I've taken before, like I used to, do you remember it was big in South Africa. I don't know how, I think it was big in America when they had Men Are Trash that came out, but just before Me Too.
No, I didn't hear Men Are Trash. No. Was that a campaign?
Yeah, Men Are Trash. Anyway, I heard this and I was in a very painful state of my life. And I was like, yeah, that's been my direct experience. And I was like writing blogs and I was doing this whole thing. And so I was like in the mix of that conversation, getting a lot of hate. But then at the same time, I would have some friends who I would sit with like for an hour and explain to them from a woman's perspective compared to their perspective. And it was exhausting and draining. And then also sometimes even try to explain to my more racist friends about like what racism is, or like try from my perspective. And I don't do that anymore. I don't even have those friends, because like it left me feeling drained. They're not open. If someone's not open, the conversation doesn't flourish. It doesn't start to fulfill you. It just starts to make you feel like you're talking to a wall. So I've realized like removing that and just freeing myself from those constraints and focusing then on like what I can do is like definitely better. So that's one thing that's helped me with that.
Yes. And actually, just to ask you even to expand upon that a little bit, I think that part of your story was so interesting, just in what brought you to the US, and you shared that you had a very different friend group than the one that you started with.
Yeah, well, that's been really helpful having Clubhouse again. I was in a Clubhouse room on Thanksgiving called Blacks Eating Pumpkin Pie. I don't know if you saw that one, but it was very funny. It was like, I was like, what is this? So
I have my sweet potato pie, sweet potato.
Yes, I learned about sweet potato. I'm like, okay, that's where, because I don't get pumpkin pie because it's not a thing in South Africa. Like, it's just, we don't have that there. So while, yes, South Africa is like, it's got its problems, but the majority of people in South Africa are Black. And my friends in South Africa were Black women. Like that was my circle group by the time I left. So I came to America. I just started on my American dream of success and just forgot about all of that because I wasn't thinking about it like specifically. And it really reminded me with Black Lives Matter, when all that erupted, I was like, oh, this is what's going on. Like, I don't have any Black friends here. I'm in like white America. It's like white bread. And there is such a, like, I don't laugh the same. There's no, it's not the same. Like, I'm not even as I'm not understood. It's like things that would be very normal for my friends back home are like, it's extra, or it's weird, or it's, oh, you're so funny. Literally prime example. So I'm seeing you today and you're like, oh, look at your outfit. It's so great. It's not like, oh, Lauren, what are you? You're so funny. I could never do like there's no judgment. It's just like you do you. And I'm like, thanks, I will. And I've remembered that with Clubhouse. And I'm so grateful to be in a space where there are actually just Black people, where I can feel more expressed. Like it's just different. And I'm so grateful for that, because I've missed that in America, where it's not the same. Like that conversation about pumpkin pie was so funny. And when I came on and I said, I don't like pumpkin pie, and like people were like, what? You look like you drink pumpkin spice lattes. Like, what's your profile picture? Like, you look so white. And I'm like, I know, and I am, but like I'm an immigrant from Africa. So there's something that's just a bit different.
Yeah.
And like, yeah,
amazing.
That's been the experience of America. I'm just like so relieved, because it's also like, unless there is like I'm living in Hermosa Beach now, and I'm meeting a lot of people who aren't from here. So they've come from different countries and places, and having those conversations where I'm sitting around on a rooftop with people from all different parts of the world is so comforting, because I'm used to that in South Africa too. Like we all gather together. And it's just so important to have that mix. It's like such a joy in my life to have people from different cultures that I don't understand, instead of just like white bread America, which I'm like, I'm out. Like I'm not interested anymore. So yeah.
Yes, no. Well, I'm so glad that we have connected for sure. I'm definitely looking forward to having more conversations like this. This is like I'm like super psyched that we've met, that we connected, and that, like you said, the vibration has been there. I think if we can, if more people can give space to like, hey, do I connect with this person, and let go of all of the kind of preconceived notions. But it's also, I also recognize there is a difference, like when a person has not grown up in the US, it does make a difference in terms of their kind of conception of what it means to come and connect. And I've even seen it with, as I've like connected with a lot of the UK groups and London groups on Clubhouse, and particularly like lots of African, Nigerian individuals who have grown up in London or grown up in the UK. And there too, like there's we're all Black, but we all have like very, very different outlooks and experiences around what it means to be a Black person. So there's so much out there, so much opportunity to learn from one another. And I definitely would love
to expand. Yeah, like I think to like, we can wrap this of like, when you're not fixated on that goal of like that man or that like one outcome, and you open to more, there's so much space for opportunity, for connection with people that you wouldn't have expected, because it's not just the single-minded one track, I'm going to get married. Like I find a man and that's my plan and that's my happy ending. It's like, if that wasn't, there's so much space for other things, for so much extra. I even said, I like this may sound strange, but take it or throw it away. I can like fall in love with a lot of random things. Like, and the other day I was walking to this coffee shop that I love, and there's this wall, this really beautiful wall. It's like red brick with like gray door frames. And I was like, oh, I was like struck by romance, like for the wall. And I was like, that wall, like I love that wall. And I thought every day that I walk past that wall, I'm like engaged, like the wall is attractive. Everything can be like that. Like you can fall in love with like your first sip of coffee, or with the sunset, or with, you can just, it's all there for you. And I'm like the world is flirting with me. I'm like, what's going on? Like everything feels so like juicy. And I never would have known that was possible, because I didn't think I only thought one thing was an option for love. And I'm like, all things are an option for love. Who knew?
Yes. No, absolutely. I think that, to circle back from the beginning of the console, I think really at the end of the day, all this conversation around alternative happy endings and rewriting our narrative really comes back to like the love of self first. So, and because at the end of the day, whatever my vision is for my life long term, it has to start with loving myself first. I think that's important for all of us, to be grounded in who I am, being comfortable in my own skin, and just to be open to really being available for what the universe has in store for me. It's like, yes, I have my vision of what I would like that to look like. And yet I have to trust like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be today, and trust that life is unfolding as it's meant to.
Yes, I love it. So great to see you. And I can't wait till we can travel around and you can come to LA, or I'll see you in New York, or like, how great will that be?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I had a trip for LA planned for like this past March. So that will be one of my priorities at some point to get out that way.
Amazing. Have a great day, and I'll see you in Clubhouse later.
Yes. Thanks, Lauren. You're amazing.